It was Amber's 34th birthday. We were in Austin, at this upscale fusion restaurant she'd been wanting to try for months. The kind of place with waiters and aprons that look more expensive than my entire wardrobe, and lighting so dim you have to squint at the menu like you're deciphering a riddle. I reserved a big corner table by the window, one of the last ones available that night. I called ahead twice just to make sure everything was set. That was me, always trying to be thoughtful, organized, intentional. Amber liked that about me once. She was glowing when we walked in, laughing before we even made it to the table. I'd invited her coworkers, some mutual friends, a couple of people I barely knew but she insisted mattered. I let it go. It was her night. I wanted her to feel special. We ordered drinks. Amber got her usual, something fruity and bubbly, dressed with way too much garnish. I had a whiskey, neat. The music was just loud enough to drown out the small talk, which honestly, I was grateful for. I've never been the social butterfly. That was her role. She could work a room like a politician. One laugh, one compliment, and everyone loved her. Dinner started off fine. Everyone was chatting, passing plates around, complimenting the truffle pasta like it was manna from heaven. Amber was the star of the table in her element. Her laugh was a little louder than usual, more sharp than warm, but nobody seemed to notice. Except me. I always noticed. She had this way of locking eyes with someone just a second too long. She did it with her coworker Paul when he made some dumb joke about sales targets, and she laughed like it was the funniest thing she'd ever heard. She did it again with her friend Rachel when they toasted to fresh starts. Little things. Things I would have ignored a year ago. Things I used to tell myself not to overthink. But then came the cake. The waiter brought it out with a sparkler stuck in the middle, like we were at a kid's birthday party. Everyone cheered. I stood up to take a photo, thinking this would be the kind of memory we'd look back on one day and laugh about. And just as the candlelight flickered on her face, she said it. "I'm tired of being only with you. You're boring in bed." Like that, clear as day. No hesitation. The table went dead quiet for a second, and then came the awkward laughter. The kind that's not laughter at all, just a nervous reflex when you're witnessing something uncomfortable and have no idea what to do with it. Gina, her best friend since college, giggled and sipped her drink. Paul looked like he was waiting for a punchline. Me? I felt my stomach drop, like I'd missed a step going down the stairs. My first instinct was to brush it off. Laugh. Make it okay. That's what I always did when she pushed the line. That's what I was trained to do. But then she looked at me, locked eyes, unblinking, and added, "Relax. It's a joke, right? A joke. The kind of joke that leaves your dignity bleeding out under the table while everyone pretends not to notice." I forced a smile, nodded. I didn't say anything. Couldn't. My face was hot, my ears ringing. I felt like I was watching the whole scene from outside my body. Her coworkers went back to their drinks. Rachel mumbled something about how we all say weird things after champagne. The moment passed, for them. But not for me, because I saw it. In her eyes. That flicker of something. Triumph? Disdain? I couldn't quite name it, but it was real. She wasn't joking. Not really. She was testing me. Seeing if I'd push back. Seeing how much she could get away with. And the worst part? I didn't push back. I just sat there and took it, like I always did. The rest of the night blurred by. People laughed, talked, paid their shares of the bill. Amber was all smiles, kissing cheeks, thanking everyone for coming. When we got into the Uber, she leaned her head on my shoulder like nothing had happened. "That was fun," she said, a little slurred. I just nodded. She passed out on the ride home. I stared out the window, watching the lights of Austin blur into long streaks of white and red. My hands were clenched in my lap, jaw tight. Something had shifted inside me. A line had been crossed. And the worst part? It wasn't even the line itself. It was the fact that she didn't even think it mattered. When we got home, I helped her out of the car. She kicked her heels off at the door, stumbled to the bathroom. I stood in the living room, staring at the framed photos on the wall. Us at the lake, us in Mexico, her laughing in front of a mural downtown. I didn't recognize the woman in those pictures, and I wasn't sure she recognized me anymore either. I sat on the edge of the bed while she changed into one of my t-shirts, crawling under the covers like nothing happened. "You coming to bed?" she murmured. I said, "In a minute." She was asleep within seconds. I stayed up for hours, staring at the ceiling. Because here's the truth. That moment at the restaurant, it wasn't an isolated thing. It was just the first time it was public. The first time I couldn't deny it anymore. For months, I'd been brushing off the little things. The late nights, the sudden shift in tone, the way she flinched when I touched her, but smiled when strangers got close. I told myself we were just in a rough patch, that she was stressed, that I needed to be more patient, more supportive, more whatever she needed. I thought if I loved her hard enough, stayed steady enough, everything would come back. But the truth is, you can't outlove someone's resentment. And you can't fix what they won't admit is broken. I lay there in the dark, the sound of her breathing slow and even next to me. And all I could think was, she's not who I thought she was. Or maybe she never was. That joke, if that's what it even was, wasn't a punchline. It was a reveal. A mask slipping off in front of a dozen people, showing me something raw and ugly underneath. Something I wasn't ready to see. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Something in me snapped that night. Not in an angry way. Not in a violent way. Just quietly, like a thread finally pulled too tight, snapping with a soft little pop that no one hears but you. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't even bring it up the next morning. I just made coffee like usual, left for work like usual, answered her texts with the same tired emojis. But inside, something had changed. I used to think that relationships died in big, dramatic scenes. Suitcases thrown downstairs, voices raised, doors slammed. But now I know, sometimes it starts with something small. A single sentence at a birthday dinner. A few words that don't seem like much, until they echo for hours, days, forever. And once that echo starts, you can't go back to silence. The morning after the restaurant incident, I woke up before Amber. I sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor, replaying the night on a loop. Her voice, her smirk, the way everyone had looked at me. The way she had looked at me, like she was daring me to say something, like I was nothing but a prop in her party. She stirred behind me, let out a soft sigh, then rolled over and mumbled, "Babe, did you feed the cat?" The cat. Not, "Hey, sorry if that joke went too far last night." Not, "Are you okay?" Just the cat. I went downstairs, fed the cat, made coffee, and sat at the kitchen table in silence. And that's when it all started to come back. Everything I'd ignored, everything I'd explained away, everything I had shoved under the rug because I didn't want to believe it. The night before had ripped the rug right out from under me. It wasn't just the joke. It was a pattern. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. It started a couple months back. Amber's job had gotten more intense, or that's what she told me. She worked in marketing and they were pushing some big campaign for a new client. First, I believed it. The late nights, the extra meetings. She'd text me things like, "Don't wait up," or "Still at the office. Sorry, babe." And I'd make myself dinner, sit on the couch and wait. She used to call. Always. If she was late, if she was staying out, if something came up, she'd call. But that stopped. Suddenly everything was texts. Short, cold ones. No calls. No details. Her tone changed too, less affectionate, more matter-of-fact. And then the phone stuff started. She used to leave her phone face up on the kitchen counter, unlocked. If I needed to check a recipe or play music, I could grab it, no problem. But now, it was always face down, always on silent. And the notifications had changed. No names, just iMessage or Slack or new notification. One night, I asked her about it. "Hey, did you change your phone settings?" She shrugged. "Oh yeah, just getting too many spam calls lately." It was annoying. Sounded reasonable at the time. But now it felt rehearsed, like she'd practiced that answer. Then there was the lingerie. We hadn't been in *mate much lately. Maybe once or twice a month. She said she was tired, stressed. Said she didn't feel us *XY anymore. didn't like how she looked in the mirror. I reassured her every time, told her she was beautiful, that I loved her. But then one Saturday, I went to do laundry and found a new set of lingerie in the hamper. Black lace, tags already removed. Not from a store I recognized. Definitely not from anywhere we'd ever shopped together. She hadn't worn that for me. I stared at it in the basket, heart pounding, brain trying to find a logical explanation. Anniversary coming up? Maybe she bought it for a surprise and changed her mind? But then, why was it used? Why wasn't it hidden? Later that week, I brought up the idea of going to the lake. Just a weekend getaway. Something low-key like we used to do, before life got so busy, so detached. I told her we could rent the same cabin, bring wine, maybe hit the trails. She smiled, tight-lipped. I'd love to, but work's *ling me right now. I'll probably need that weekend to catch up on emails. I said I understood. I always did. That Saturday night, I was scrolling through Instagram stories when I saw it. Party. At a rooftop bar downtown. Flashing lights, loud music, glitter in the air. And there was Amber, right in the middle of the frame, laughing, drink in hand, wearing that same black lace piece under a sheer top. The post was from her coworker's account. Not even hidden. Not even subtle. My stomach dropped. I replayed it 3 times, staring at her face. At how happy she looked. How free. How unfamiliar. When she came home that night, she didn't even mention it. She walked in with a box of leftover cake, kissed me on the cheek, said, "Sorry I got held up at dinner." Dinner. Could have asked her. I could have shown her the video, but instead I just nodded. Like a coward. Like someone who didn't want to hear the lie come out loud. I had a million chances to connect the dots, but I didn't want the picture they made. So I looked away. Now I couldn't. Every night she worked late. Every time she flinched when I reached for her hand. Every girl's night that came with smoky perfume and a different excuse. It wasn't just in my head. It was a slow unraveling that I'd been too scared to name. I started going back through my memory like a detective retracing a case he botched. There was the weekend trip she took with her coworkers. She said it was a retreat. No spouses allowed. She came back with a tan and a new necklace I'd never seen before. Said it was a gift from the team. But when I asked who gave it to her, she couldn't name anyone specific. "We all pitched in," she said, eyes not meeting mine. There was the night she fell asleep at the office and didn't come home until 2 a.m. Said she lost track of time while finishing up a presentation. Her shirt was wrinkled. Her hair smelled like cigarettes and she doesn't smoke. Or at least she didn't. Or the time I caught her smiling at a message on her phone, then quickly locking the screen. I asked who it was. She laughed and said, "Rachel being ridiculous again," then turned the volume down and changed the subject. It was always something. Always just believable enough that I talked myself down. Maybe I was just paranoid. Maybe I was insecure. Maybe I was turning into one of those guys who spies on his wife and starts fights over nothing. But now I knew better. That birthday dinner flipped a switch. That was the moment I stopped making excuses for her. Because here's the thing. I'm not perfect. I know that. I've made mistakes. Maybe I work too much. Maybe I miss social cues. Maybe I'm not the most exciting guy in the world. But I show up. Care. I've never lied to her. Never disrespected her. Never made her feel small in front of people she loves. And that's what hurt the most. That she could sit at a table surrounded by people and laugh at me like I was nothing. That she could use me as a punchline and then sip champagne like it was all just a game. I kept thinking back to how she looked when she said it. There was no warmth in her eyes. No love. Just cold curiosity. Like she was observing me, not speaking to me. Like I was an experiment. After that night, I started paying closer attention. I didn't snoop, at least not yet. But I watched. I noticed how she kept her phone in her back pocket now. How she'd step outside to take calls. How her tone shifted when she was texting. More smiley. More playful than anything she'd said to me in weeks. One afternoon, I heard her talking on the phone in the kitchen. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I had just come home early and paused at the front door. Her voice was low, soft. She said, I miss you too, but it's complicated. I can't just walk away. I stood there, frozen, keys in hand, waiting for her to say more. She didn't. By the time I walked in, she had already hung up. She was standing by the sink, sipping water like nothing had happened. She smiled at me, fake practiced. Hey babe, you're home early. I smiled back. Yeah, figured I'd surprise you. And just like that, we were back in the routine. The script. The silent play we were both pretending not to be in. But inside I was keeping track. Every glance. Every excuse. Every omission. I wasn't paranoid. I wasn't insecure. I was waking up. And once you wake up to a lie, it's only a matter of time before you go looking for the truth. It was a Thursday morning when the plan changed. I was supposed to be in Dallas overnight, meeting a client about a software rollout that was turning into a logistical nightmare. The kind of client that micromanages everything down to what font you use on PowerPoint slides. I'd packed a bag, booked the hotel, even kissed Amber goodbye at the door. Good luck, she said, holding her coffee with one hand, scrolling Instagram with the other. Text me when you check in. I told her I would. She didn't look up. I got in the car and drove halfway to Dallas before I got the call. Meeting postponed. Some internal delay. They'd reschedule next week. I should have been annoyed. Instead, I felt something different. Something cold and electric in my chest. I don't know why, but I didn't call Amber. I turned the car around, pulled into a rest stop, and sat there for a while, engine running, thinking. Something in me had been building. Days of tension, weeks of suspicion, months of doubt. I stared at my phone, my thumb hovering over her contact. But I didn't press it. Instead, I drove home. It was just after 4 p.m. when I pulled into the driveway. The sun was still up, casting a gold glow on the windows. Everything looked normal, quiet, peaceful. But I felt a pit in my stomach, like my body already knew what I didn't want to admit yet. IK** led the engine, sat there for a beat, then grabbed my bag and went to the front door. It was locked. Strange. Amber was usually home by now, and we never locked it during the day. But I had my key. I turned it slowly. The house was dark. Not pitch black, just muted. Shades drawn. The kind of quiet that isn't calm, it's hollow. I stepped in and closed the door behind me, moving slowly like I was trying not to wake someone. The air felt different. Stale. Heavy. I didn't hear the TV, didn't smell dinner cooking, didn't hear her voice upstairs on a Zoom call like usual. Then I saw the light under the bedroom door. Soft. Yellow. Flickering. My heart started pounding. Not fast, just deep. Like something ancient was waking up inside me. I didn't call out her name. I walked toward the stairs, each step slower than the last, each creak of the wood sounding louder than it should. When I got to the landing, I could hear something faint. Music. Lo-fi beats. The kind she played when she wanted to unwind. The bedroom door was ajar. I pushed it open gently. What I saw wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a movie scene. No one was tangled up in bed. No limbs flying everywhere. But that almost made it worse. Amber was alone. Sort of. She was lying on top of the comforter, wearing one of those silky robes I'd only ever seen in the back of her closet. Her hair was curled, her makeup perfect. She looked like she was waiting for someone. And beside her, on the bed, was a man's shirt. Not mine. It was buttoned halfway, like someone had taken it off in a hurry and tossed it carelessly. At the foot of the bed, men's shoes. Size 11, maybe. Black leather. Not a brand I recognized. 2 wine glasses sat on the nightstand. One still had lipstick on the rim. The other was almost empty. My eyes moved from the bed to the dresser, where a watch had been left, silver, bulky. Definitely not mine. Then the sound. The shower. Running. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I just stood there, letting the scene soak in like poison. In the bathroom, the water kept falling. Amber turned her head, eyes opening slowly like she just dozed off. For a split second, she looked peaceful. Then she saw me. She bolted upright, the robe slipping slightly off her shoulder. "Babe?" she said. like she wasn't sure I was real. What are you doing here? I didn't answer. I just looked at her. Really looked at her. And I saw it. The panic behind her eyes. The way her hand instinctively tugged the robe closed. The way her legs shifted under the throw blanket like she was trying to hide something. Herself. Maybe. I thought you were in Dallas, she added quickly. I was, I said. Meeting got canceled. Silence. Drip, drip, drip. The shower behind the door. A shape moving behind the frosted glass. She didn't even try to explain. She didn't get up. Didn't say his name. Didn't beg or cry. She just sat there. Waiting. I stepped back. I didn't shout. Didn't curse. Didn't flip the mattress or punch the wall. I just walked out. Down the stairs. Past the framed photos. Past the living room where we used to cuddle up with Netflix and cheap wine. Past the hallway where we had danced the night we moved in. Out the front door. I got in my car, hands shaking, and drove. I don't even remember where I went. I just remember the cold creeping in as the sun dipped below the skyline and the world got darker. Somewhere along the drive, I pulled into a gas station. I sat in the parking lot with the engine running and stared at nothing. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. Once, twice, a flood of texts. I didn't read them, couldn't, because I already knew. Everything I needed to know had already happened. The betrayal wasn't the worst part. It was the indifference. The fact that she didn't even flinch. That she didn't jump to explain or lie or deny. She looked at me like I was the one who interrupted something. Not her husband, not her partner, just an inconvenience. And that told me everything. When someone cheats, you expect tears. You expect panic. You expect the scramble to cover tracks, the desperate apologies. But I didn't get any of that. I got a blank stare and a robe slipping off one shoulder. I thought I'd feel rage. I didn't. I thought I'd feel heartbreak. Not yet. What I felt, more than anything, was clarity. All those months of wondering. All the nights I sat alone at the dinner table. All the times I doubted my own gut. Told myself I was imagining things, paranoid, insecure. I wasn't. I was right. And that scared me more than anything. How easy it had been for her to do it. How long she'd probably been doing it. How I never saw it clearly until now. I thought about going back. About walking into that bathroom and dragging the guy out by his collar. About demanding names, dates, reasons. But for what? What would it change? What good would it do to play sheriff in a story where I was already written out? So I kept driving. I ended up at a diner outside of town. The kind with cracked vinyl booths and a waitress who calls everyone Han. I ordered coffee. Just coffee. Sat there for hours, nursing the same cup until it went cold. The waitress asked if I wanted a refill. I nodded. She poured, smiled gently, and said nothing else. That silence was the first kindness I'd felt all day. Amber's texts kept coming. Where are you? We need to talk. You misunderstood. But I didn't. I understood perfectly. Because people don't leave signs. They leave trails. And hers was a highway I'd been ignoring for too long. I didn't go home that night. Or the next. I slept in my car the first night, parked behind the diner until the sky started turning gray. My phone died sometime before dawn. I didn't care. When I finally turned it back on the next morning, the screen lit up with missed calls and messages stacked on top of each other like evidence. Amber, where are you? Please answer. You're making this worse than it is. We need to talk like adults. That last one stuck with me. Like adults. As if walking in on a stranger's shirt on my bed was some kind of misunderstanding that could be cleared up with calm voices and coffee. I ignored all of it. By the second day, the tone changed. I think you're spiraling. You didn't even let me explain. You're being dramatic. That was the word she chose. Dramatic. On the third day, she showed up at my office. I was in the middle of a meeting when the receptionist knocked and said my wife was here. I remember the way she said it, careful, like she already knew this wasn't normal. I told her I'd be right out. Amber stood in the hallway like she belonged there. Perfect posture. Hair done. Neutral makeup. She looked composed, controlled. Like she'd rehearsed this version of herself. "Can we talk?" she asked. I nodded and led her into an empty conference room. She didn't sit right away. She stood by the window, arms crossed loosely, like she was waiting for me to calm down, like I was the problem that needed managing. "I just want to say this calmly," she began, "because emotions aren't helping either of us." There it was. Step 1. Establish control. "You overreacted," she said gently. "You saw something out of context and filled in the blanks with the worst possible scenario." I stared at her, waiting for the apology, waiting for the crack in the mask. It never came. "He's just a friend," she continued. "It started as emotional support. You've been distant for months." I was lonely, vulnerable. He listened. Still nothing about me. About the betrayal. About the bed. The robe. The shower running. "You didn't even give me a chance to explain," she said. "You just left." I laughed. Couldn't help it. Came out sharp and short, and for the first time her expression faltered. "Explain what?" I asked. "The toothbrush that wasn't mine? The wine glasses? Or the fact that he was in the shower in our house?" She sighed, slow and exaggerated. "You're focusing on details instead of context." "Context? That's manipulation," I said quietly. Her jaw tightened. "No, that's communication. Something you've never been good at." There it was. The shift. From calm to corrective. From partner to supervisor. She started talking about our history. How much she'd invested in us. How she'd always carried the emotional weight. How she'd felt unseen, unsupported, unfulfilled. Not once did she say she was sorry. Not once did she say she loved me. What she wanted wasn't forgiveness. It was control. A return to the version of our marriage where I absorbed discomfort so she could remain comfortable. "I just want things to go back to normal," she said. "Normal." I stood up. "There is no normal anymore," I said. "You didn't make a mistake. You made a series of choices. And now you're trying to manage the fallout instead of owning it." She looked at me then like I'd betrayed her. "So that's it?" she asked. "You're throwing everything away?" I shook my head. "You already did. I'm just not pretending anymore." She left without another word. That was when I understood something important. She wasn't sorry she cheated. She was sorry she got caught. And once I saw that, there was no version of reality where I could go back. After Amber left my office, I sat there in that empty conference room for what felt like an hour, maybe longer. The walls were white, bare. I remember tracing the grain of the wooden table with my finger like I was hypnotized. The air conditioning hummed in the ceiling. Outside the door, people moved on with their lives. Phones ringing, keyboards clacking, conversations about deadlines and coffee orders. But inside that room, it was just me and the finality of everything I'd been avoiding for too long. That night, I packed a duffel bag. Just the basics: jeans, t-shirts, a couple of flannels, one book I hadn't touched in months. I didn't leave a note. Didn't text her. I figured she'd figure it out. I drove west. No GPS. No set destination. I just pointed the car toward Colorado and kept driving. I'd visited a tiny town up in the mountains a few years ago for a work conference. I remembered it being quiet. Trees for miles. A single diner. One gas station. The kind of place where people still nodded at strangers. That's where I went. I found a cabin online while I was pulled into a rest stop outside Pueblo. It was rustic. Cheap. No Wi-Fi. I booked it for a week. When I got there, I barely unpacked. I dropped the bag by the door, opened all the windows, and just stood there, letting the cold mountain air fill my lungs. The silence was strange at first, almost too clean. No notifications. No background TV. No fake laughs or staged apologies. Just wind in the trees and the occasional crunch of pine needles under deer hooves outside. The first night, I didn't sleep much. My body was still on high alert, like it hadn't caught up with the fact that I was safe now. Not happy, not healed, but away. That was enough. The second day, I woke up with the sun. Made black coffee on the old stovetop. Sat on the porch with a blanket wrapped around me. watching the fog lift off the trees like ghosts dissolving into the light. It was the first time in months I felt like I could hear myself think. I didn't have a plan. I didn't meditate. I didn't journal. I didn't try to process anything in a productive way. I just existed. I went for long walks, made simple meals, sat with silence. My phone buzzed occasionally. Texts from Amber. Can you please just tell me where you are? I'm worried about you. This isn't healthy. Ghosting me isn't the answer. At first, I felt a little guilt. Not because I owed her anything, but because I'd spent so many years trying to be reasonable. I was always the one who fixed things, who compromised, who made things work when they shouldn't have. Silence, for me, felt unnatural. But the longer I sat with it, the more I realized silence wasn't absence. It was space. Space I needed to finally hear my own voice again. The messages from Amber changed over time. The panic faded into agitation. You left without saying a word. This is emotional punishment. I thought you were better than this. That one made me laugh. Better than what? Letting her rewrite the truth in her favor again? I stopped checking my phone after that. By the fourth day, I noticed something strange. I wasn't thinking about her as much. Not in that obsessive, circular way. Not the kind of thinking where you replay arguments or imagine confrontations that never happen. The thoughts were still there, but they floated by like driftwood. I'd watch them pass, then go back to whatever I was doing. One night, I built a fire. Sat in front of it with an old journal I found in the cabin's desk drawer. I didn't write anything deep, just bullet points. Memories. Good ones. Bad ones. Moments I'd overlooked. The first time she kissed me on the shoulder when I was washing dishes. The time I told her I didn't feel like I was enough, and she brushed it off with a joke. The way she used to wear my hoodie when she was cold. The way she flinched the first time I said, "I love you," like it surprised her. I wasn't trying to sort them into categories. I wasn't searching for a thesis. I just let them land on the page, raw and unfiltered. Then I flipped to a blank page and wrote one sentence. I am still here. I stared at that sentence for a long time. Felt real. Amber's voice, her presence, her manipulation. It had taken up so much space in my life, in my head, in my identity. For a while, I think I forgot I existed outside of her. That I had thoughts and wants and disappointments that weren't attached to her mood swings or approval. Out here, in this nowhere town, I remembered. The sixth day, I hiked a trail that led up to a rocky overlook. I stood there for an hour, wind stinging my face, staring down at the endless green below. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel healed. But I felt awake. I wasn't sure who I was becoming. But I knew, without question, who I wasn't anymore. I wasn't the guy who made excuses for red flags. I wasn't the guy who confused humiliation with humor. I wasn't the guy who stayed quiet so someone else could feel powerful. I was the guy who left, not to escape, but to return to himself. On the last morning, I cleaned the cabin, stripped the bed, took out the trash, left a note for the owner that just said, "Thank you. I needed this more than I knew." When I got in the car to drive back, I didn't feel dread. I felt clarity. I wasn't driving back to Amber. I was driving back to the rest of my life. Whatever came next, it wouldn't be about her. It would be about me. And for the first time in a long time, that was enough. A week after I left, I got a message from a mutual friend. Amber had been fired. Apparently, someone forwarded her personal text to HR. Maybe it was her lover, maybe it was karma. Either way, it didn't take long. Her social media accounts vanished. The house went up for sale. She faded out of the circles she used to light up. And I didn't chase, didn't gloat. I didn't have to do anything. Lies always cave in on the person who builds their life on them. I just stepped aside and let gravity do what it does best. A month later, Amber showed up at my door. She looked like someone trying to time travel. She spoke softly about our past, trying to rewind what couldn't be undone. But she wasn't here for love. She was here for comfort, for structure, for the life I no longer held up. I didn't argue. I didn't explain. I just closed the door. No anger. No final blow. Just silence. Not as punishment, but as proof I'd finally chosen myself.